Hi, second graders. Today we're working on lesson 5, draft. The objective, I can write a personal narrative. Your job today is to write a quick draft of a personal narrative. To get you started with that, I want you to look back at your story sketch and use this to help you tell your story. Okay, so I'm going to model for you what I'd like you to do on your own independently today. Now, before I started writing my draft, I used my story sketch to think out my story and I actually said it out loud. So I'm going to talk out my story to you. Okay. Let's see. First, I remember squatting down next to a garden bed. It was a windy spring day. I remember the wind blowing through, and I was wanting to get my garden beds ready for planting. I dug into the soil and found something curled up and white. At first, I thought it might be a root of a plant that I had just pulled out, but as I continued to dig, I found several of these white bugs, or white things, and they seemed to be clustered. I found them in clusters in the corners of my garden beds. So I actually started digging through all of them frantically. I started to panic a bit, and I found them in every single bed. So then I had to figure out, I did some research, and I wanted to figure out if these are bugs that could stay in my garden or if they were bugs that would harm my plants and they needed to go. So I pulled out my phone and I searched and asked Google what these bugs could be. I discovered they were grubs, and as I kept reading, I discovered that they were bad for my soil, that the bugs would actually eat the roots of plants that I had growing, which means they would kill my plants. They had to go. So finally, I researched how to get rid of them naturally, and Google told me that I can use beneficial nematodes. So I went to our nursery to get some beneficial nematodes. Okay, that was sort of talking out my story about what happened in my moment. So after I say my story out loud, I want to start writing it down. Now, I actually started to write my story down before, so you wouldn't have to watch me do it. It's a little long. But I made some goals for myself before I started writing, and I want you guys to do the same thing. I told myself that I was going to try to keep my pencil moving the whole time I was writing. And I even put a couple sharpened pencils next to me, so if I broke a pencil, I would have one ready to go and I wouldn't have to stop. I also told myself I wasn't going to get stuck on spelling. If I wasn't sure how to spell a word, I was going to say it out loud, write down the sounds that I hear, circle the word, and keep going. All right, so now I'll share you what I wrote for my draft. Remember that today we're just writing a draft. I'm going to be adding more details later in the next couple weeks. Here's my story. I squatted next to my garden box. I wanted to get my garden boxes ready for planting. I dug into the soil and unearthed curled up creatures. There's my not sure how to spell, circle and move on. I discovered several white bugs that seemed to live in clusters. Out of my 6 garden beds, I found these white bugs in every bed. I began to panic. I needed to know what they were called. I pulled out my phone. White bug in garden, I typed into the Google search bar. I clicked on images. I saw a picture of what I was holding in my hand and the word grub underneath. I clicked on the photo and started to read about the bug. I skimmed the article about grubs. Then I found it. Grubs can wreak damage in the vegetable garden. Grubs eat the roots of plants, which end up killing the plant. All right, Google, how do I get rid of the grubs naturally? I said to myself. Beneficial nematodes, the article said. What are those? I said. Well, let me go ask the employees at the nursery. I left the closest nursery in search of beneficial nematodes. All right, so that is my draft. Remembering I'm going to be adding more details in the next couple weeks. So students, today, I want you to do what I just modeled for you. I want you to first look back at your seed story. Say your story out loud. If it helps, you can say it to a stuffed animal or a pet. I said it to Hummingbird before I wrote my story. And third, I want you to draft your story. Keep your pencil moving and get your thoughts on paper. You can do it.